everyone. Party at the Gallagher house.
Haven't touched you yet, Frank.
You're a disgrace, Gallagher.
Thank you, sir.
Man, this is what I thought living in LA was gonna be like.
Ray Donovan. This was 25 years ago, I'd have put a gun to your head.
Woo!
All right, say everything you just said, but do it.
Let's go. Let's get it. Let's go. Tape. Man, it's a good feeling. It's a good feeling to be from Houston, see the support. Houston is a growing city. It's getting better and better and better. Every step of the way, it's starting to become one of the best cities in America. There's some talent in Houston. No matter what you do, with sports, entertainment, it's fire down here. Houghton, what the Astros doing. We got Megan Thee Stallion, you got Travis Scott, you got the Charlo twins. Champions. That's all you hear is winning. Champions. Someone that's like, next level. This is one of those things, man. It feels good to be from Houston. We headed to the Rockets game. We're gonna see James Harden take care of business, do what he have to do. This is something I do often. I always come to the games, and get a chance to relax outside of training. That's all right. Let's get it. Rockets game tonight. Y'all know it go down. Hey, you're not from Houston. Dude, there you go. There you go. It's James Harden. I made my 30-day weigh-in today. Hard training. We get ready to spar tomorrow. Now we at the Rockets game. It don't get no better than this, bro. It don't get no better than this.
Charlo says he wants to be the king of the jungle.
There's no way you can tame a lion. And that's me.
And that's me.
The power is for real.
And the entire sport of boxing is hearing Charlo's roar. What? He is the king of this jungle.
Lions only, baby.
Jamal Charlo versus Dennis Hogan for the middleweight championship on Showtime.
th time, Showtime finds itself at the Barclays Center in a beautiful, albeit chilly, downtown Brooklyn, New York. Welcome, everyone. This is Showtime Championship Boxing Countdown. My name is Luke Thomas, joined by Brian Campbell. You might know him from CBS Sports. You might know the both of us from Morning Combat. More on that in a bit later. But we are here tonight. We're going to be with you for 2 hours, getting you ready for the Showtime triple header tonight right behind us. That's going to be starting at 9 p.m. It's going to be anchored, Brian Campbell, with a WBC middleweight title defense as Jamal Charlo puts his title up for grabs for the surging, somewhat unheralded, but very interesting challenger in Dennis Hogan. So, Brian, when you think about what the most important consideration is in understanding Charlo versus Hogan, what is it?
Look, Jamal Charlo is one of the rising stars in this sport, and certainly in this division at 160 pounds. Has the power, has the speed, has the brashness, the brand power, the ability to talk. Lions only all day. Made a big splash upon moving north to 160. 2 quick knockouts in this building against the likes of Jorge Sebastian Island and Hugo Centeno Jr., but his last 2 fights have gone the distance. He said he wants to come out in this fight and remind us exactly who he is as one of the better middleweights in the world and a guy who takes care of business early. We're going to find that out against a very shifty, difficult opponent, like you mentioned, in Dennis Hogan. Very shifty, very unusual. An undefeated Charlo, really looking to make a statement. Also, we have a co-main event bout with Chris Eubank Jr. we'll talk about in just a second. By the way, don't forget, if you want to watch this fight, you're going to have to do that on Showtime, or you can go to Showtime.com, start your free trial. That's the best place to go to, Showtime.com. Get in a free trial. Lots of great programming, but tonight, of course, is all about Charlo,
it's going to be all about Hogan as well. And we'll talk about this more throughout the course of our program here for the next 2 hours. There's a case to be made, Brian Campbell, about whether or not Jermall Charlo with Triple G, kind of still very good, but a little bit on the downside of his maybe prime or the stage of his career. We don't know what's next with Canelo Alvarez. Jermall Charlo could come out of tonight and the next 2020, in the first and second quarter, as maybe the best middleweight on the planet. I don't know that that's the craziest idea in the world. Is there a bigger narrative you're looking at this evening?
No, it's going to be interesting. Look, like I mentioned, of the 4 title defenses, the last 2 have had different elements. A left hand injury in his homecoming when he defeated Brandon Adams by wide decision. He's a guy who likes to make big statements. He wants to do that tonight in an arena in which he has called home now in 4 of his last 5 bouts. The native of Houston really wants the spotlight on himself. In fact, you talked about that good co-main event, Chris Eubank Jr., Matt Korobov. Jermall Charlo told me himself this week, can we stop talking about anybody else? It's the Jermall Charlo show on Saturday night. And if he can exit with the type of knockout he's predicting, it's going to be hard for anybody to look at 160 pounds and not think Charlo.
Yeah, check out Brian's podcast. Jermall loves him. Now, we also have 2 fights right here on Showtime's YouTube channel as well as Facebook. And calling those fights will be Ray Flores and Steve Farhood. They are down at ringside. Boys, what are you expecting from those fights tonight? And, of course, from the Charlo and Hogan main event.
Thank you very much, Luke. Happy holidays to both you and Brian, alongside the Hall of Famer Steve Farhood, getting ready for our 2 bouts. As Luke pointed out, we have Luisa Haughton from Australia going head-to-head against Lorena Villalobos. That is a rematch from their matchup about a year ago. Also tonight in the middleweight division, Steve, we have Aleem going head-to-head against Ronald Ellis. Both men similar stages of their careers, but we give you a plethora of different things when it comes to boxing tonight with the atomweights. What are you expecting out of the ladies?
Well, let me start by saying, Ray, that I don't think I knew what an atomweight was until we were announced to be doing this women's fight. An atomweight, for those who don't know, is the women's division only 102-pound fighters. These women are both 5 feet or under, small but very, very action-packed styles. And as far as the middleweight fight, well, you know, there are layers in boxing, and we're talking about Charlo in the main event on Showtime. That's one layer. That's the highest layer.
Yes.
But Immanuwel, Aleem, and Ronald Ellis, they're looking to raise their profile so that they may be maybe one fight away from fighting for a world title. So there's a lot at stake for them, and it's the middleweights clearly are the theme tonight.
Well, as you look at it, as you talk about the middleweights, Jermall Charlo and Hogan, along with our co-feature, you have Korobov going head-to-head against Chris Eubank Jr., who is making his United States debut. So there's quite a bit of business to be had here, especially at 160.
Indeed so, and it's going to be very interesting to see Chris Eubank Jr. I covered his dad, Chris Eubank Sr., a legendary fighter from England. Chris Eubank Sr. turned pro in America in 4-round fights and then never came back. Well, Chris Eubank Jr. is 30 years old. He's had many fights. This will be his U.S. debut. So he wants a shot at Charlo, or at least a title fight, most likely against Jermall Charlo. He has to look good doing it. He has to sell himself to the American fans tonight.
Well, it should be a very interesting and entertaining night of action. We'll send it right back upstairs to Luke and Brian.
Thank you so much, Steve. Thank you so much, Ray. Brian, real quickly, with the main event middleweights, your co-main event middleweights, of the 4, who has to make the biggest statement tonight for their career and why?
I think it's Chris Eubank Jr., which Ray just alluded to, making that U.S. debut, but even more, coming down from 168 pounds, in which he's competed at the last couple of years because of the business opportunities. Had that loss to George Groves, bounced back on a 2-fight win streak, retiring James DeGale, the former title holder, but he's back down at 160 pounds. What he says is his natural better weight. He's a big-time slugger. He's a big-time talker. He's got a celebrity name.
He's a big-time brawler, too, though.
But he's got to prove against a very talented guy with an amateur background in Matt Korobov that he can survive in advance and get ready for that title
picture. During the Showtime weigh-in show, our own Paulie Malignaggi thinks that everybody is kind of sleeping on Korobov. The fight that people want to see if the night goes the way we think it is.
He pushed Jermall Charlo in December a year ago.
That's right. People think it's going to be Eubank because that's the one they want to see if Charlo gets by Hogan tonight. But at the same time, Korobov's a problem. He was a world champion and at amateur level.
That's a flip-a-coin fight. And you want to talk about the prospects, the potential for getting a title opportunity next. That's going to be a fight to watch out for. You got to like the boxing of Korobov against the wild unpredictability of Eubank. Hey, Eubank said he's going to exit this building with a bang tonight. Can't wait to find out.
We'll see about that. Now, Steve and Ray had alluded to it. We have a 10-round WBC interim atomweight championship between Luisa Haughton and Lorraine Villalobos. This is a rematch for folks who may not know. You actually have seen their first fight. You did some details on it. This is interesting because Hawton, I think, has captured Brooklyn's imagination this week, a real energetic force. And this first fight, it's an atomweight fight that they got after it. I think folks can expect fireworks.
Villalobos took the fight on 10 days' notice. They went at it for 5 rounds. Eventually, Villalobos had to call it quits at that point. It was back and forth. They're going to do it a second time right now. Titles at stake, interim belt. Going to get a big title shot for the winner. Can't wait to see.
Now, often you hear there's claims about the women's, they don't have the same kind of pop. The women's divisions, they don't have the same kind of pop, especially at a lower weight class, 102 pounds. What can you say for the kind of action they're capable of delivering with this size and stature?
Oh, volume. High volume. And
Right.
you want to talk about go back and watch that first fight. It may have been Bang Bang Lulu from Australia setting that pace, but Villalobos dug in deep. She landed the bigger shots in the middle rounds. She made that a fight. I don't care if you're 5 feet tall or under like these two women are. You let your hands go. This is going to be fun.
And often you got to remember this first fight that they had it took place under less than ideal conditions, right? With an opponent taking it on 10 days notice. This time it's a little bit better, right? And if you're a female in boxing, there's a lot of weird weight classes and catch weights that they make. You kind of got to take the fights when they make it to get the chance to have a rematch that was made, for lack of a better description, Brian Campbell, properly. It's fairly rare.
Fairly rare indeed.
Kind of important.
And look, this is an opportunity for both, but specifically for Bang Bang Lulu, as she called herself, former pro skateboarder, didn't come to the sport until she was 29. She's got the style, she's got the look, she's got the charisma, she's got the personality. She said it herself, women's boxing on the rise in the U.S. She thinks she can be a face. Got to get by Villalobos the second time to get there.
Yeah. All right, so let's do it now. Let's go to our ring announcer, Miguel Flores.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Barclays Center here in Brooklyn, New York, as Premier Boxing Champions presents Showtime Championship Boxing Countdown. Brought to you by Lions Only Promotions, TGV Promotions, and Showtime. Sponsored by MGM Resorts and Brooklyn Boxing. This bout will be 10 rounds for the women's WBC World Interim Atomweight Championship. The WBC supervisor in charge is Alberto Leon. The judges ringside are Tom Crusoni, Ken Ezzo, and Alan Mace. The referee in charge of the action is Sparkle Lee. Introducing first in the red corner, wearing the red trunks with gold trim. She weighed in at 100.6 pounds. Her record stands 4 victories, including 2 by knockout, opposite to 2 defeats. Hailing from Los Angeles, California, presenting Lorena Villalobos. And her opponent across the ring in the blue corner, wearing the purple trunks. She weighed in at 101.4 pounds. Her record stands 9 victories, including 5 by knockout, opposite of just 2 defeats. Coming all the way from Fremantle, Australia, the current WBC World Interim Atomweight Champion, Louisa Bang Bang Haughton.
So here we see Luisa Haughton, as Brian pointed out, the former skateboarder turned professional prize fighter. She got into boxing at 29 years of age, only had 3 amateur bouts, spent some time as a kickboxer, but then went ahead and transitioned into the pro game, and lo and behold, she has made quite a career so far, Steve.
She is very impressive, and she's also a lot of fun to watch. You know, she walked into this ring with a big smile on her face, and she generally fights with a big smile on her face. A couple of fights ago, she fought someone named Brenda Flores. She got cut. Her nose was bleeding heavily, and she was smiling through all that. So she just enjoys herself in there, and it's one of the reasons she's fun to watch.
And as the jab comes out for Houghton, meantime for Lorena Villalobos, she is coming into this fight right in a 2-fight win streak. They had their first fight about a year ago to the date, back on December 8th, and they pointed out upstairs with Luke and Brian that it was under less than ideal conditions. As you saw, Villalobos took the fight on 10 days' notice also, It was outside in Southern California, rainy and cold, so not the best circumstances for either fighter.
Very true, and one of the reasons that this is a fair fight and a good fight is because they're really both atom weights. They're both at their best around 102 pounds, and because of the thinness in the women's ranks in professional boxing, a lot of women have to take fights well above their best weight. Both of these women have done that, but you expect better results when you fight at your best weight, obviously.
And so far, it has been both women are coming out and looking to engage, throw some leather. Coming up on 30 seconds to go. Luisa Haughton, she hasn't fought in about a year since that fight against her, the first fight with Villalobos. It's a little bit of a layoff. She was supposed to have a fight before that, but it got derailed. The right hand that connects. Originally from Perth, Australia, they call her the Perth Pugilist down with the line down under.
Wait a minute, Ray. She's got 3 nicknames now. Bam Bam, Lulu,
and I've seen reports the Perth Pugilist.
That's 3 nicknames.
Unbelievable, right?
And don't forget 2-minute rounds for the women.
Yeah. Final moments, and that ends the first. Don't forget later tonight, Charlo and Hogan, 9 o'clock Eastern, 6 Pacific time on Showtime. Start your free trial now if you don't have it.
Lulu Haughton in the corner, being advised by her manager and trainer and significant other, Grant Elvis Phillips. We know Grant, he's been in boxing for 40 years or so. Famous for heading the company that makes Grant boxing gloves.
We see that Floyd Mayweather has worn his gloves among others. And for Houghton, she's the mother of 2. She has a son and a daughter, and she said she cannot wait to get to her 2 children in Australia to enjoy the holiday. Spent time training in Southern California, out in the Los Angeles area. Meantime, for her opponent in Villalobos, just 23 years of age, riding a 2-fight win streak. She also has her significant other in her corner, Christian Chimpa Gonzalez, who's a professional fighter as well, Steve.
There are love stories and there are glove stories. It's a cliche.
I like it.
Couldn't help myself.
Yeah, Steve is funny during the holiday season. I love it.
Only during the holiday season. So a little surprising, I think, what we saw in the first round with Lulu Haughton sort of clearly wanting her opponent Villalobos to come to her. And as a result, I think Haughton wasn't as aggressive as she usually is. Now she's kind of stepping forward. Keep in mind, a reach and height advantage is something that Haughton is not used to having, but she does have it in this fight.
Good left hook, a right hand thrown by Villalobos. The first fight ended as Villalobos did not answer the bell to start the 6th round, but the consensus amongst her camp is that had she had the proper time to train, she could have potentially won the title. So that is what the thought process is, but with the full training camp, they feel that tonight's result will be vastly different.
Yeah, and keep in mind that Villalobos took that fight having never been past 4 rounds, Ray.
Good right hand followed by a left, and right now she's showing she's letting her hands go and doing quite well as the counter puncher here in the second.
Yeah, in this round, Villalobos is inviting Lulu in and doing well counter punching. So they've both tried to draw the other fighter in. Right now, Villalobos is having success doing that.
Ebb and flow action here to start the evening at Barclays Center. The 20th time that Showtime Championship Boxing has been here, and what I am calling the new crown jewel of boxing here in the Northeast. Some memorable events here at Barclays Center. That ends the second. Once again, Ray Flores alongside the Hall of Famer Steve Farhad. Happy holidays, everybody. We hope you're all enjoying the holiday season. Steve, so far through 2 rounds, what have you seen thus far between the women?
They're sort of trying for position, trying to draw the other fighter in so that they can counterpunch. They have the same idea in there, which one's going to be more successful. Clearly Lulu not as busy as she usually is. She's usually a firecracker in there, throwing a lot of punches. but she's trying to draw her opponent in so she's not as active as she usually is.
And Steve, Showtime Championship Boxing, no stranger to showcasing the women. We've seen Clarissa Shields. She has a matchup on January 10th live on Showtime. The Serrano sisters as well. So we have seen quite a bit. Showtime is committed to showcasing professional women's prize fighting.
And as a result, as a partial result of that exposure, Ray, the women's game is in a better place than it's been in a long time. There are legitimate stars in women's boxing. We know Katie Taylor, who's also been on Showtime, is an absolutely gigantic star in Ireland. Clarissa Shields has a unique story, a two-time Olympic gold medalist. We'll see her again, as you said, January 10. And Amanda Serrano, a champion in about 132 different divisions. She's very exciting and fights aggressively and can punch. So there are a lot of women to be very excited about if you're a boxing fan.
Very healthy is the sport of women's boxing. And starting off the first 30 seconds, Villalobos threw a nice combination, but back comes Houghton. Styles make fights, Steve, and the way you look at these two women as previewed by Brian and Luke, they make for an exciting matchup every single time.
Yeah, they're going to throw a lot of punches, usually, because they're not going to have the huge power, especially at 102 pounds. But if you want action and you want a fast pace, you're usually going to get it. And right now, Luisa Haughton is trying to set that pace. And while she's being the aggressor, she's getting hit by some counter left hooks as well. So it's good two-way action.
What's also interesting, Steve, as we're under a minute to go here in this third round, where the judges are going to decide. Are you going to go with the aggressor? Are you going to go with the counter-punching, the heavier punches being connected by Villalobos?
Yeah, it's a great point, Ray, because I've said it a million times. In scoring a fight, the hardest kind of fight to score is when two fighters are trying to do different things. In this case, one is leading, one is countering. So who's more effective?
And nice body work. A left hook to the body by Houghton. Houghton said she wants to get this victory and then go ahead and move on to bigger fights within her division. Right uppercut by the Australian in Houghton.
Yeah, there is a world champion from the Czech Republic at this weight, Fabiana Batiki, and that's who the winner of this fight would like.
A left hook that connected by Villalobos, followed by a right hand down the center. Another left hook, and the bell sounds. The action is intensifying between Houghton and Villalobos. Taking a look at it again, Steve.
Yeah, Houghton had a very strong round until really the last 10 seconds or so, and she got hit with a couple of punches flush. I would like to see that left hook, that counter left hook of Villalobos a little shorter. It's a little wide, but she's still landing it.
For Houghton, she's no stranger to going on the road. She actually went to Japan, where she won a world title by 10-round decision back in 2016. So she has been all over. This is her first time fighting here in Brooklyn. And she said that she's so happy to be here fighting in Brooklyn for the first time. She's really pumped for this opportunity.
Exposure at a big card is invaluable for fighters, especially women fighters who have so much more trouble than male fighters making a name for themselves and getting that exposure. And to be on a card like this, I would think both of these women are not only very excited, Ray, but probably a little nervous too.
Oh, no question, as Houghton gets cracked with a left hook by Villalobos. And those left hooks are really finding a home for the 23-year-old. Another left hook by Villalobos. Just constant left hooks in abundance.
And we'll see what kind of condition Villalobos is in. Remember, never been past 5 rounds. That was her first fight against Houghton. And until you do it, even if you're in great condition, in the back of your mind, you have to ask yourself, can I do it?
A right hand that connects by Villalobos, but back comes Houghton throwing plenty of punches. It is a buffet of shots landed by Houghton. And it's, as Paulie Malignaggi points out on Showtime Championship Boxing, Steve, it is a mental game when it comes to fighters. Can you push yourself and have enough energy remaining in those rounds, which you've never been in?
It's a great question, and that's one of the reasons I'm for 2-minute rounds for the women. A lot of the women want to fight 3-minute rounds like the men do. I think that having 2-minute rounds for the ladies sometimes allows them to fight at a pace that they would not fight at if they were 3-minute rounds.
What makes it more exciting because you have such a smaller time period to get as much work that you can in when it comes to impressing the judges.
Exactly, and you see the pace of this round has been very, very furious.
Houghton continues to come forward. One item for Houghton to work on, Steve, in my opinion, is to move her head more because she is getting pelted with that left hook, and it's because her head is on the line, meaning she's not moving her head and it's stationary.
Yeah, if you're going to be aggressive and walk toward your opponent, you're going to get hit some, clearly. But she has to minimize that. You're right.
A right hand that connects by Houghton. Another one. And that concludes the round.
Best round of the fight so far for Lulu Haughton.
Houghton came forward, threw plenty of punches, and will observe some of her work from the Australian.
And it's important here for Houghton to go to the body. Remember, with her opponent having never been past 5 rounds, she wants to dominate the second half of the fight. And if she can put a few rounds in the bank in the first half, which I think she's done, she's in great shape to try to win this fight in the second half.
Well, it's that whole mindset, Steve. Put a little bit of money in the bank, and then you can cash it in later. And that is very well the thinking for the 34-year-old in Luisa Haughton. And there is Lorena Villalobos, just 23 years of age. Her opponent, Luisa Haughton, former professional skateboarder turned professional fighter. She said at 34, she believes that there's still time to become the best pound-for-pound women's boxer on the planet. That is her goal. But first, she must get past this challenge once again of Villalobos.
Yeah, you talk about Lulu Haughton moving her head. She's getting hit by that left hook again and again. There she does. It happens again there.
It's just she comes forward, Steve, and she's throwing so many punches that she leaves her chin exposed, and she gets nailed almost every single time with that left hook from Villalobos. But the double jab is there for Houghton.
And Houghton, with her ambition to be the best pound-for-pound women's fighter, I give her credit for that. It will be very difficult because we know that at the top and the bottom, weight-wise, of the women's game, the ranks are somewhat thin. Claressa Shields has had that same problem when she was 168 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing for 102-pounders. Not that many good fighters to fight. Certainly not that many fighters to make money against.
Well, very rarely do you see cases like Manny Pacquiao starts off in, 108 pounds and then soars through the ranks to become one of the world's best pound-for-pound fighters. A nice left hook for Houghton, digging away on the
Tripled
body.
Up there, Ray.
Look at that by Luisa Haughton, starting to walk down Lorraine Villalobos.
Well, we're at that point in the fight where Houghton knows that Villalobos has never been past 5. We're nearing the end of the 5th.
And this, in their first meeting, it was Villalobos who did not answer the bell for the 6th. Houghton is starting to take over, pounding away upon Villalobos. A left hook followed by a right cross that connects. Very good work by Luisa Haughton, who is starting. Oh, big right hand that lands by Villalobos to conclude the round. Well, that was a round, Steve, that was pretty much dominated by Houghton, but Villalobos landed a right hand to let her know she's still there.
Exactly, and that's the second round we've seen, Ray, where Villalobos has landed something big late in the round, but not enough to win the round because that round was a very big round for Lulu Haughton.
And as we take a look, when it comes to Villalobos, how much of a confidence booster is it knowing that you do have moments of success in the fight?
I think it's a confidence boost because she can see she can land that left hook over and over, but that she hasn't hurt her opponent. And I don't know that she can. I don't know if she has the power to do that. That's the real problem because she's losing these rounds.
Well, and you need to be able to start earlier, and I think that is the mindset for Villalobos, is that you did hurt your opponent, but too little too late. You have to do it earlier in the round and start more aggressive.
Exactly right.
And there we see Luisa Haughton, similar to that of what we saw earlier today when it came to Joshua and Ruiz. Have to jump on your opponent early.
And Houghton not smiling as much as I would have expected.
No.
She knows she's in a real fight.
Well, there's a left hook that connects, followed by a right cross. 2 right crosses by Houghton, and Villalobos continues to plod forward.
You just get the feeling by what we're seeing, Ray, that not only is Houghton the slightly taller fighter with the longer reach, but she's the physically stronger fighter.
When she's starting to try to push around Villalobos and impose her will upon her.
I think she's doing just that.
A left hook smacking right into the chin, followed by an uppercut by Luisa Haughton.
And Villalobos continues to land that left hook. It's a wide shot. Lulu Houghton should be able to see it, and all she really has to do to slip it is bend her knees, and she'll go down and the punch will go over her head.
Under a minute remaining in the 6th round. Ray Flores, Hall of Famer Steve Farhood upstairs at the desk. Brian Campbell, along with Luke Thomas, the host of Morning Combat every single Monday. Both engaging in close distance here. A left hook again by Villalobos.
You would think the close distance would favor Villalobos, the shorter fighter, but it doesn't because she's not the physically stronger fighter.
When she also tries to get proper leverage behind that left hook, she gets all of her weight behind that shot, Steve, but the chin of Houghton is something to respect.
You look at Houghton's record, 9-2, 5 KOs. As for Villalobos, 4-2 with 2 KOs.
Since that loss, that Villalobos, a big shot, down goes Houghton! Oh my goodness! That's the end of the round. One punch is all it takes. And what a big round for Lorraine Villalobos.
Same story, Ray. The left hook did it. And for the 3rd time in this fight, Villalobos lands something big late in the round. Did the bell save Houghton? We don't know.
Boom. She got all the leverage behind it, and crashing into the canvas was Houghton.
And keep that picture in your mind the next time somebody says to you, the women or the lighter weight fighters can't punch. They can punch.
Well, take example A in a few moments right there. Putting her down. Compact, big shot. She's been setting it up beautifully the entire fight, Steve.
And what's going to happen now? Sparkle Lee, the referee, is a veteran referee who worked the Christina Hammer Clarissa Shields fight earlier this year. She's worked many top female fights, female world title fights, but she was pretty, it seemed to me, judging by body language, she was pretty close to stopping that fight.
Well, if you look also, Houghton, her right arm got trapped pretty much behind her body. That is how disorientated that she was with that knockdown. But back she comes, trying to stem the tide in her favor. Another left hook by Villalobos. High drama here at Barclays Center between the women in this atomweight matchup.
And among everything else to consider is the fact that because that was a 10-8 round for Villalobos, this fight got really close on the cards all of a sudden.
I completely concur with you, Steve. If you are Luisa Haughton, you've got to be so careful. And you look at her guard has gone up more. She has her right hand above by her head more. She's trying to focus and improve her defense.
But she's most susceptible when she's punching, and that right hand isn't by her here. That's why I feel it's best she just bend her knees and duck under the punches, but she has not done that. She's so intent on putting on pressure and punishing Villalobos to the body that she's sort of neglecting defense. It worked fine until the last 10 seconds of the last round.
When Steve, it is a reckless aggression, not a calculated aggression that we saw early by Houghton, because she felt as if Villalobos could not hurt her.
And she's really making no concession. She's bleeding from the nose now, but she makes no concession to the fact that she was badly hurt the last round. She's fighting the same way.
Excellent matchup between Luisa Haughton and Lorena Villalobos. This is a rematch from their fight 1 year ago. And they are putting on a fantastic matchup thus far here on Countdown Live. A right hand that connects by Villalobos, but back comes Houghton. Houghton showcasing that hand speed.
A good comeback round for for Houghton.
And that's the end of the 7th. If you were in the corner, Steve, what are you telling Luisa Haughton if you're Elvis Grant Phillips?
Well, she's got to consider slipping that left hook. That's number one. She's a physically stronger fighter. She's had success with the style she's employing. I would still come forward, still apply the pressure, because she, theoretically at least, should be the stronger fighter in the later rounds. But she's got to slip that left hook. It almost cost her the fight, Ray.
When, as you alluded to, Steve, it's about bending your knees, moving from side to side. Now, if you're Villalobos, how do you continue to set traps to invite in someone like Houghton?
Well, I think Villalobos at this point needs a shutout the rest of the way on the cards, or needs to score another knockdown. So she does have to invite action, invite Lulu to be the aggressor, and then take advantage of it by landing that left hook. It's worked to this point. Why won't it work again and again?
Round 8, this one's scheduled for 10. Ray Flores, the Hall of Famer Steve Farhood, Brian Campbell, Luke Thomas, Countdown Live. We go live in an hour and 23 minutes. Showtime Championship Boxing, our main event. Jamal Charlo defending his title against Dennis Hogan. Also, the U.S. debut of Chris Eubank Jr. in action against Matt Koroboff in our co-feature here tonight. A triple header on tap. Start your free trial at Showtime.com. But again, the pressure by Houghton continues to be, for the most part, the storyline, with the exception of the left hook from Villalobos.
And now you see Houghton coming in with her hands pretty low.
Going to the body was Houghton, but back comes Villalobos, a right hand that smacked off the temple of Villalobos moments ago.
And as we consider Lulu Houghton's future, you know, she is 34 years old. For a fighter who's had only 10 or 11 pro fights, she certainly can't survive a slip-up here. She has to win this fight.
When this is a fight, she dominated the first fight as she stopped Villalobos. She could not answer the bell for the 6th round. A left hook again by Villalobos, but back comes Houghton. It is Houghton's volume of punching, her speed, and her combinations, but you still have those thudding shots from Villalobos.
Yeah, Houghton's technique, punching technique, is very good. She throws short, straight punches. Oh, that was a brutal right hand to the body there by Houghton.
We saw Villalobos almost bend over, and they both are going toe-to-toe. The women heating up the action here at Barclays Center. Well, so far through the first 8 rounds, Steve, we have gotten a fight that has lived up, if not surpassed, expectations.
You know, what I'm thinking about now, Ray, is that women still have to win over a lot of fans. Not everybody likes women's boxing. Here we have 2 women nobody ever heard of before tonight. Certainly no one in America ever heard of, or on the East Coast ever heard of, and in a division no one ever heard of. And look what they're doing to sell the game. I mean, this is an excellent, excellent action fight.
Well, Steve, this is a wonderful appetizer for what we have later tonight. Who doesn't love appetizers, especially during the holiday season?
Exactly.
I mean,
right.
My goodness, this is a proper precursor to what we have later tonight. Coming up, we have Immanuwel Aleem in action against Ronald Ellis, and then the triple header that we have on Showtime Championship Boxing.
And you know what? In all the fights we're going to see on Showtime, and the Aleem fight included, we may not see as pure a knockdown as we saw in this fight.
Well, that was a vicious knockdown, but give credit to Luisa Haughton for being able to get up. It took her a little while, but she did rise to her feet as round 9 has begun.
Well, I have Houghton ahead by 3 points, despite that 1-10-8 round for Villalobos. But Villalobos showing that she has the ability to go 10 rounds.
And she isn't showing any signs, Steve, of slowing down. She is properly conserved her energy. She's in very good condition, and she is performing up to the level that the stage requires.
Houghton has that clear edge in strength. Keep in mind, her one world title was at 105 pounds. Doesn't sound like a lot, 3 pounds, but it does matter to fighters, and it does make a difference.
Well, especially when it comes to women's fighters, because they, being able to gain weight or lose weight, things along those lines, it isn't the easiest, even a few pounds. But look at the body work by Luisa Haughton.
And one idea, and clearly Villalobos needs ideas at this point, as she's, I think, falling behind. One idea might be to hook to the body occasionally when she's close to bring that guard down. Then she can hook to the head.
Focus on the body so the guard comes down, and then you can go upstairs. But back comes Houghton. Houghton with a left hook that caught the attention of Villalobos.
You know, it's such a simple fundamental that young fighters learn. After you punch, bring the punch back and protect yourself. It's not easy to do, though, especially when you get tired.
Well, and it requires extreme concentration, and they both, again, are swinging to end round number 9. One more round remaining as Lorraine Villalobos will go back to her corner. And coming up, we'll have Emanuel Aleem collided against Ronald Ellis, a significant matchup that will have ramifications at 160 pounds.
Yes, very interesting matchup on many levels, and we'll talk about some of the things that went on yesterday at the weigh-in that make it such an interesting fight.
Well, for Lorena Villalobos, this is her first fight going 10 rounds, and so far, she's fared pretty well, Steve. I don't think that she is winning this fight, but she is giving a very good account of herself.
I agree totally. In fact, it's just as impressive in a way as what Luisa Haughton is doing, because keep in mind, Villalobos, this is a woman who's had 6 professional fights, only one time in her career was she in a scheduled fight longer than 4 rounds, and here she is fighting one of the best fighters in her division, you know, very competitively. And here we are in the 10th round.
Well, and for Villalobos, she started boxing at the age of 10, had a 16-8 amateur record, and decided to turn pro. And a nice combination by Villalobos. It was a left hook followed by a right cross. No matter what the outcome of this fight, Steve, both women, their stocks will raise in the eyes of the public.
No doubt, and if Houghton wins this fight as I have her ahead, I hope she gets a title fight, because again, she's 34 years old. She's been a world champion. She wants to be a champion again. Now, the champion is from the Czech Republic. I don't know what the situation with her is. Maybe she doesn't want to come to America. I don't think she'd go to Australia. And the money very often isn't big enough to lure fighters away from their homes. So it's problematic for the women, even the top women.
Final minute coming up of the 10th and final round. Luisa Haughton and Lorena Villalobos have been putting on an entertaining matchup to begin the evening. And doubling over was Villalobos, and again, they continue to swing.
And Luisa Haughton is always going to be an exciting fighter, Ray, because she's physically strong, she's confident in herself, she's naturally aggressive, and she's getting hit, as we can see. So what more can you ask for? That's what makes an exciting fighter, vulnerability.
When she's always in a good mood, I mean, I don't think she can even... I don't know if she can relax, Steve, to be honest with you. I mean, she's so energetic. She was energetic at the press conference and all week long.
Villalobos grimacing here. I don't know what the problem was there.
Well, she was holding the back of her head. May have been a shot behind the head. Who knows? A right hand. Final moments of what has been a highly entertaining affair here on Countdown Live with Houghton and Villalobos. What a fun matchup to start the evening.
I say let them open every show at Barclays.
I love it.
Let them do it a 3rd time, a 4th time, and a 5th time.
I wouldn't mind. Styles make fights, and lo and behold, these two women are meant for each other. A cut on the bridge of the nose of Luisa Haughton as she is propelled upwards from Elvis Grant Phillips, Ray Flores, Steve Farhood. Steve, that was the right way to start off the night.
It sure was, and what a great advertisement for female boxing, too. I understand there are certain men, some of them my age and older, who just don't accept women's boxing. They can't stand it for whatever reason. I've always loved it. I think that this was a great advertisement because it was fought at a high level, and it was fought with high energy, and you had a tremendous dramatic moment when Lulu got knocked down. So what more do you want?
When it sets the table also for, you know that the guys have the fights on in the dressing room as they're preparing for their matchups, and they're kind of casually observing. So this sets the table. Who's going to steal the night at the end of this evening?
And coming in with the 2 fights we're doing, Ray, I was thinking it would be the male middleweights that might steal the show. it's going to be hard to top this.
This was a fun matchup with Houghton and Villalobos, but as on your unofficial scorecard, Steve, how do you have it officially?
Let me give you my exact
Your
score.
unofficial
for the 10th round.
scorecards.
I have it 97-92 for Houghton, and that's giving a 10-8 round in round 6 to Villalobos.
Well, and for Villalobos, you look at what she can build upon. She went 10 rounds. She went ahead and she got the knockdown. She proved that she could fight at this elite level.
No doubt. What this will do for her confidence would be tremendous because she had no idea she could fight at this level. Even her first fight with Houghton, where she was competitive, she pooped out and they had to pull her out of the fight. Her corner retired. So that did not exactly build a lot of confidence. But with a proper training camp, enough time to prepare, she's now a 10-round fighter.
And I think for Luisa Haughton, we showed, and it was proven, that she goes ahead and she was elevated by Elvis Grant Phillips, her boyfriend, trainer, manager, but that she's just a step above Villalobos.
Yeah, and I think the biggest difference in the two, shorter punches from Lulu, but also the physical strength. She was just a stronger fighter, and she was able to come forward and keep pressure on the entire fight, and she really never stopped punching.
Steve, what's interesting, though, as we're taking a little bit of time for the scorecards to be rendered, I wonder when that happens, me being a ring announcer at times gets me a little nervous.
Suspicious.
That means what is going on? Are we going to get something crazy? Because that isn't out of the realm of possibility.
Well, a couple of the early rounds, we saw Villalobos land big shots at the very end of the round. They were big shots. They weren't enough to win those rounds on my card. If the judges gave her a couple of those rounds, it could be closer. But with that 10-8 round, Ray, I can't see the judges scoring for anybody but Houghton.
And here's our ring announcer, Miguel Flores.
Ladies and gentlemen, before we read the decision, give it up one more time for these two warriors leaving it all in the ring. And now, after 10 exciting rounds of action, we go to the judges' scorecards. All three judges saw the same 95-94 for your winner by unanimous decision. And still, the WBC World Intercontinental Champion, Louisa.
So still the champion, Luisa Haughton, but she won. You heard from Miguel Flores. Scores were 95-94. So Haughton won by a single point.
Surprising to me, I thought she was the more effective fighter. Obviously, that knockdown made the fight much closer. I thought Houghton won the last couple of rounds, so maybe she needed to win the last couple of rounds as it turned out.
Steve, we pointed out that when it takes a while for a decision to be rendered, expect the unexpected. You and I thought that Houghton won the fight, but again, those were a couple of toss-up rounds, and you never know what the judges are looking at. Not saying that they're wrong, but we kind of predicted that something may have been a little off-kilter.
I think that the closeness of the scores should be a reminder to Lulu Houghton that she has to improve her defense, because she got hit with a lot of flush shots, and clearly that affected how the judges saw some of those rounds.
Well, this was a satisfying appetizer. We'll stand it back upstairs to Luke and Brian. Gentlemen.
Thank you so much, Ray. Luke Thomas, Brian Campbell right here. All right, you just saw the judges, 95-94. As advertised, you were right about the volume. Biggest takeaway from the fight is what, Brian Campbell?
Take that and rewind it back, and we see it a third time. Look, the biggest takeaway, this is a victory for women's boxing. We talk about never seeing an atom weight title fight on television before, pushed to this level. You had two fighters that came out, lived up to the billing and the opportunity that they gave. Lulu Haughton, maybe with the brighter star potential, survives in advance. But good Lord, Lorraine Villalobos, age 23, 7 pro fights, twice she pushed a world-class performer and Bang Bang Lulu nearly to the distance there, to the edge of no return. I want to see both of these again. Luke, you and I have covered MMA as well for a long time, where the women's game is not too far close on par to the men's game. Fights like that can get women's boxing closer.
To Steve's point about the power of the atom weights here at 100 and I think 2 or 3 pounds, yes, he was absolutely right about that. But more than that, how about a round of applause for the guts of that particular style? I mean, there's many different ways to box and strike, and I would argue the more sophisticated way is to do it a little bit at distance with setting up things with feints to get certain reactions. It keeps you safer. It makes your punches ultimately more accurate. wasn't a whole lot of that. They kind of just got in each other's face the whole time. And I'll give some credit. Villalobos had some good footwork to get off the ropes continuously. But Hawton just walking her down, dude, that's a very hard way to fight. It's damage intensive. And these two put it on each other. I really take my hat off to them.
And what I like is that it ultimately was an action fight, yet they still stayed in their roles through this two-fight series, which is, one, Houghton being the boxer, but the aggressive boxer in your face, and Villalobos standing back, looking to land the bigger counter shots. That 6-round knockdown via left hook was no joke. Shout out to Luisa Haughton for getting off the canvas, continuing on and winning the fight.
She got the booze because of that 6-round knockdown, but nevertheless, Luisa Haughton, the rightful winner. Now, Brian Campbell and I, this is not the only thing that we do. We host a show every Monday at noon. It airs exclusively on YouTube. We have our own channel around the name of the show. It's called Morning Combat, okay? It's produced by Showtime. What is Morning Combat? What is our show ultimately about? Well, look, you watch sports shows all the time, and they're really well produced, and they might talk about the Cowboys, and they might talk about the Lakers, and they'll get to combat sports, but the people talking about them are casuals who don't really know anything. Look, I'm not pretending to be right about everything, and neither is Brian. We're going to be as wrong as we are right, but we've been doing this for 15 years, each of us. Imagine a well-produced sports show first thing on Monday.
That's all about combat.
That's all about combat sports, boxing, MMA, and everything else in between, Brian. There's just nothing like it out there.
There really isn't. And look, we're talking fights, of course, but we pull no punches when it comes to the analysis, the back and forth. You said it, 12 Eastern every Monday. You want to start your week off correctly. You want to know when you go into the office that day, by the water cooler, what should you be chatting about? What kind of opinions you could have? We'll fill your minds. MK Ultra will brainwash you. We'll give you that. But it's boxing, it's MMA, it's everything else. We have a little bit of fun as well.
We have a lot of fun. We don't take ourselves too seriously, but we do try to make accurate points based on a decade plus inside the business, covering both boxing as well as MMA, and as I mentioned, other combat sports as well. So give us a like, or rather I should say a subscription on our own YouTube channel on Morning Combat, and join us at noon every Monday. Now, of course, Brian Campbell, Morning Combat, we'll come back to that a little bit later. We're here for something else. We're here for Jermall Charlo and Dennis Hogan. Now, interesting about that is it's a big night for Showtime. 20th time I mentioned being back here at Barclays Center.
22 when you count those two Showtime on CBS welterweight title bouts in the past few years.
Fair point. But it's not the only big event for Showtime this month here in December. The 28th, they go down to the ATL. I went to high school in Atlanta when Gervonta Davis takes on Yuriorkis Gamboa. And we were there in Baltimore where Gervonta had his homecoming fight against Ricardo Nunes. Here's some highlights.
And now making his way to the ring in his much anticipated homecoming from Baltimore, Maryland, here is the defending WBA super featherweight champion of the world, Gervonta Tank Davis.
Gervonta Davis, 21-0, 20 knockouts, and the hometown hero.
Union has been confident all week.
Well, we'll see. We'll see how it translates. Double jab from Davis. It is a very effective jab.
And I think Davis has also made a concerted effort here to try to walk down the guy who feels he's a puncher. You can see just the body language of Davis is to kind of be the bully right now.
Good left hand right there, and that staggered big left hand in close quarters. Nunez back to the ropes, tries to fight back, takes another huge left hand. Harvey Dock stops it right now.
A victorious Gervonta Davis basking in the attention of this crowd.
Can't wait. Can't wait, Luke.
Should be quite interesting, that particular matchup there. Both of those guys, by the way, main and co-main event from the Baltimore card, like tonight, Eubank and Charlo. Again, we'll come back to that. But let's get to Dennis Hogan here for just a second if we can, Brian Campbell. I mentioned this before. Against Jaime Munguia, I do believe that Dennis Hogan has a real claim to having should have won that contest. It's a 154. It was against a big puncher, but a big puncher who's not as crafty, honestly, as Jermall Charlo. Charlo, look, whatever else you want to say about him, he's a very well-rounded fighter, a physical fighter. Yeah, a bigger target at 160 pounds, but I don't know. It's like if you couldn't beat the guy who was kind of wild, how are you going to beat the big puncher who's not so wild? Give me the realistic path.
Well, here's what I'm saying. Just spend a couple of minutes listening to Dennis Hogan talk. Native of Ireland, fights out of Australia, and has a very unique style. His trainer, Glenn Rushton, the same trainer of former welterweight champion Jeff Horn, they call it the broken rhythm pressure fighter method. It's awkward. It's footwork, constant herky-jerky, in and out, back and forth. And from Dennis Hogan's point of view, when he doesn't know what he's going to do next, when he's flowing in a rhythm that's unpredictable, he feels, how is his opponent going to know? So why does he have so much confidence moving up in weight, facing maybe even a bigger, better puncher in Jamal Charlo. He says, look, I fought at light heavyweight at the amateurs, which is the weight I turned pro in. I fought above middleweight in the past. I love fighting bigger guys. In fact, he says, quote, it makes my day, because he has that type of pressure style that really can disarm a bigger guy if Dennis Hogan can set the pace and control it. That's going to be the obstacle for him. Avoid the big shots from Jamal Charlo. Disrupt the rhythm that Charlo wants to create with his jab. When you go back and watch the tape on Hogan, Luke, he's darting in and out. He's coming from left and right. That's a hard-moving target to pick up and feel comfortable against. And when you have that sort of brash confidence, they've called his trainer, Glenn Rushton, kind of a mix between Tony Robbins and Steven Seagal in terms of bringing the
Tony
martial
Robbins
arts into it and sort of building him up. We've seen Jeff Horn overachieve in the past against Manny Pacquiao. Dennis Hogan thinks he's ripe for the pickings here to pull the upset against Charlo.
I think it's a charitable way to look at it, but maybe a fair way too. I'll also add, if you go and look at Charlo's last fight against Adams, what was one thing you noticed there? Adams would have some luck while Charlo was waiting. He'd get popped over and over again. In fact, J-Rock's trainer spoke to Kieran Mulvaney and Eric Raskin on the Showtime podcast and saying, yes, of course, Charlo is an amazing boxer. He is super well-rounded. He's a big target, and he gets hit a little bit more than he should. The key, though, is can you get him off of his balance? Can you get him off of his base? Can you rock him in a way to disrupt him? I don't know exactly if Hogan's that guy.
Well, it's an uphill battle, and that's what the odds makers will tell you. But I will say this about both Charlo brothers, who, like I established off the top, are superstars waiting to bust out, both from a marketable standpoint and certainly from a pound for pound with their mixture of boxing acumen, speed, and power. But if you can lower their output, if you can disarm them in that way, we saw Matt Korobov a year ago sort of do that as a last-minute opponent to Jamal Charlo. Lower his output, be technical, be difficult. We saw the same thing for Tony Harrison when he upset Jermell Charlo on that same card a year ago. If you can do that and give him a different look, you may have that avenue. But that's a big if, Luke, because Jamal Charlo is one of the biggest punchers in this division and one of the best finishers. And what Jamal told me in the fighter meetings was, it's going to come down to my jab. If Hogan can get through my jab, what does he have for me?
What else did Jamal say on his podcast, or your podcast, to you? Anything else that the listeners and viewers should know?
Can we say the F word on the show? No, look, it's like Jamal said, tonight is all about him. It's all about the Jamal Charlo show. We may love the Korobov Eubank co-main event and what that potential can be down the road for a future Jamal Charlo opponent should he win. He does not want to look ahead. He knows what he's got in front of him. Even though he says this is a showcase opportunity because he plans to finish Dennis Hogan, he's respecting the challenge ahead of him.
And it's what the fans are here to see. You want to call it a showcase fight, I wouldn't argue with it, but that means you have to showcase. The last time we did this, we were in Baltimore for Gervonta Davis. You could say that stoppage, and it was the second round, was maybe a little bit early, but that punch was hellacious. It absolutely nearly folding Nunes into a lawn chair. So really showing what he was capable of doing. And, of course, now setting up this Gamboa fight that's going to be in Atlanta a little bit later. Does he have to get the knockout? Very quickly.
That's how you make a statement, but he's put the same pressure on himself, Jamal Charlo, saying, look, normally I don't try for the knockout. This time, not only am I trying for it, but I'm going to get it. When you got a moving target coming from herky-jerky angles, it's going to come down to timing. It's going to come down to setting it up with that jab. But one thing Jamal previewed to us is he says, look, I'm going to use my jab in a way I never have done before, that Hogan has never seen before. You want to make a statement in this sport? You knock fools out. You get the opponent out of there.
We're up against it very quickly. Immanuwel Aleem taking on Ronald Ellis is next. A 10-round, again, middleweight affair. Super, super quick. What should the folks expect here?
Action. Both have said their game plan was to come in and box, but both basically said, look, at some point, we're going to let our hands go and probably throw. You got Ellis moving down in weight. Both think that they are potential sleepers at 160, guys who maybe didn't get the benefit of the doubt in certain scorings in some of their biggest fights. They're ready to make noise. They both also would like Charlo down the road.
And, of course, Korobov, who's in the main event against Eubank, had a draw against Aleem. Anytime there's a draw, there's always a little bit of controversy, but it shows you actually, yes, he might be on the prelims, still a very quality fighter.
Oh, and there's a narrative that, hey, you got certain fighters that are over there on the other side of the street politically, Canelo, all that. Charlo's got some potential fun opponents in his future if he gets by Hogan tonight. A lot of guys auditioning out here in the Barclays Center ring to try to be that next opponent.
It's all about the 160-pounders. Let's go to our next fight, and ring announcer, Miguel Flores.
Cars go, you guys to me. I'm
Ladies and gentlemen, live on Showtime Championship Boxing Countdown, Premier Boxing Champions now present 10 rounds in the middleweight division. Brought to you by Lions Only Promotions, TGB Promotions, and
can I get my iPad?
Showtime. Sponsored by MGM Resorts and Brooklyn Boxing. The judges ringside are Ron McNair, John Stewart, Martha Tremblay, and the referee in charge of the action is Danny Schiavone. Introducing first in the red corner, wearing the black with red trim, he weighed in at 163.4 pounds. His record stands 16 victories, 11 by knockout, opposite of 1 defeat and 2 draws. Hailing from Lynn, Massachusetts, presenting Ronald Reckless Ellis. And his opponent across the ring in the blue corner, wearing the black and gold, he weighed in at 163.8 pounds. His record stands 18 victories, including 11 by knockout, opposite of 1 defeat and 2 draws. Right here from Queens, New York, presenting the chosen one, Immanuel.
All right, fellas, we went over the rules of the dressing room. I expect you to obey my commands at all times. Keep the bout clean, touch them up. Back to your corners, good luck.
So we have Emmanuel Aleem and Ronald Ellis. Aleem, who is 26 years of age. Now, originally this was supposed to be, they are middleweights, but this is a catchweight bout. Aleem asked for this fight to be a catchweight. Steve, you can expound upon that.
Yeah, it was a very surprising thing at the weigh-in because Aleem is the natural middleweight at 160. Ronald Ellis has fought almost his entire career as a super middleweight, 168. Yet it was Aleem who weighed in prior to the weigh-in, his own private weigh-in, to see how he was doing. He was 163 and change, so he said, we have to change the contract. Ellis was probably happy about that because he's the naturally bigger fighter. They both ended up coming in around 163. So what you said, Ray, is right. They're clearly, they want to compete at middleweight, but this fight, because of Aleem's weight, is above that.
Yeah, it's going to be very telling, Steve, as Brian and Luke pointed out, that this is in audition to potentially be an opponent down the line. So looking forward to seeing how, if either man can really make a definitive statement to become an opponent for the winner of our co-main event with Eubank or Korobov, or maybe even Charlo and Hogan as well.
Yeah, at this level, really one impressive win can get you a title fight. Plus, let's not forget, there's so many titles to fight for, so that you need that many more challengers to fill up the bill.
Nice double jab by Emmanuel Aleem. Emmanuel Aleem has been involved in some excellent matchups. He actually fought Korobov in his last fight. It was a draw, a fight that some felt at ringside that Korobov should have been given the victory, but Aleem did come on strong late in that fight.
He did. He dominated the later rounds, and if he's good enough to draw with Korobov, even if it was a controversial decision where most people thought Korobov deserved the decision, he's proven that he's a world-class fighter. And his fight with Heatroff, which we televised on Show Extreme a couple of years back, was one of the most exciting fights of that year. So this is an action guy, Aleem.
When that was when Heatroff, I believe, was undefeated at the time. And,
yes,
you know, Aleem put together a fantastic performance. Also, with Ronald Ellis, he's in bounce-back mode. He lost to DeAndre Ware on SHOWBOX. He's actually a SHOWBOX veteran. He was on SHOWBOX 4 times over the past few years. So we have seen quite a bit of Ronald Ellis over the past few years.
4 times on SHOWBOX, and the common denominator in those 4 performances, unfortunately for Ronald Ellis, his right hand. He's injured it a couple of times. He's had surgery on it a couple of times. It was injured in his last fight. You mentioned DeAndre Ware, a very close decision loss for Ellis. If his right hand is healthy, he can whack with it. If he has to protect it, then he becomes a one-handed fighter. What you want to look for in this fight, though, he has a huge reach advantage. I believe it's 9 inches reach advantage here on Aleem. And he has to use it.
Good jab by Emmanuel Aleem. As we are approaching the final moments of the first round, Ronald Ellis, Emmanuel Aleem, both men similar stages of their careers, as Aleem and Ellis both have 1 loss and 2 draws. 18 wins for Aleem, 16 for Ellis.
Ronald Ellis boxing while smiling.
And that's the end of the round. There is Immanuwel Aleem, who's trained by. We'll take a look at some of the action from the first round, Steve.
Very nice hook to the body, but Ellis did very well, and Ellis fought like he's the naturally bigger fighter, and that he came forward throughout the round, tried to impose his will on Aleem. Aleem's used to that. Aleem's a little bit on the shorter side for a middleweight. He's used to fighting with the big reach disadvantage.
Aleem trained by George Peterson. And Peterson, of note, trained Paul Williams, the two-division world champion. And Paul Williams, who I thought was one of the most exciting fighters in boxing prior to his accident that he had that has left him paralyzed from the waist down.
And we see Ronald Ellis with his new trainer, Courage Shabalala, one of the great names in boxing.
Courage Shabalala.
Courage Shabalala was a heavyweight who fought for main events and had some big fights a few years back, and he's the new trainer for Ronald Ellis.
Well, we'll see if this new voice in the corner can pay dividends for Ronald Ellis, as Ellis is 4 years older than Immanuwel Aleem. Good right hand by Aleem. Ellis coming forward, pounding away upon one another. Ronald Ellis, as you stated, Steve, is trying to use his height and his reach to his advantage.
Well, it's interesting. If he's going to be the aggressor, and you see him stepping forward now as the aggressor, it's kind of important that he try to keep the right distance between the two. He can be the aggressor and still keep a good distance and use that reach advantage. He doesn't have to get on the inside to be the aggressor. He just has to come forward, especially if Aleem is going to move backward or laterally, which is what Aleem is doing right now.
And Steve, for Ronald Ellis, he is trying to get back in the win column. He actually became, Steve, if you would believe, the 185th fighter to have his undefeated record go by the wayside on ShowBox.
Yeah, it's that number is now well above 190. ShowBox prospects get matched tough, and Ellis has had some very close decisions. 2 draws on ShowBox and a majority decision loss and a unanimous decision win. So he tends to make for close fights.
When also ShowBox produces a litany of world champions as well, so it's a great barometer to see where you are as an up-and-coming prospect. Good left hook by Ellis as Aleem comes forward. 80 seconds left here in the second. Right hand that connects by Ellis.
Well, Aleem needs to have Ellis walk into something. The problem is you see that Ellis sets up with his gloves pretty high. So the only way Aleem is going to do any offensive damage here is counterpunching. Or go to the body, lead to the body, because those gloves are high for Ellis.
Well, the only blemish for Immanuwel Aleem, or the only loss, came against Hugo Centeno Jr. back in August of 2018. And that was a highlight reel left hook knockout, and he was doing well in that fight, and then he got caught by Centeno.
Yeah, win or lose, Aleem is in exciting fights almost always.
Good shot to the body. Right hand.
Speaking of the right hand of Ellis, I remember the last fight. He went back to his corner after round 9, and his corner man said, "Is there anything wrong with your right hand?" Because we suspected it. He wasn't using it. And he just shook his head yes. And that told us all we needed to know, and he lost that fight. And that's probably why.
When also from the 4th round on, Steve, he failed to throw the right hand because he was hurt. And a right hand that connects by Ellis, and Ellis smiling, staring darts into the eyes of Immanuwel Aleem as round 2 draws to a close. The confidence of Ronald Ellis, you could tell, is there, and he's starting to gain more confidence. Obviously, a different story when you have both of your hands available for your weaponry. As you take a look at Ronald Ellis, actually upset highly regarded Terrell Gachet in the 2010 National Golden Gloves. And don't forget, we'll go live in less than an hour, top of the hour on Showtime Championship Boxing, tripleheader here from Barclays Center. Start your free trial now at showtime.com.
And, you know, talking about Ronald Ellis, and look at him there, Ray. He's a pretty good fighter. We know that, right? He may be the 3rd best fighter in his family. He has a brother, Rashidi, who's a welterweight, who's 22-0. just scored a big win over Eddie Gomez recently. And he has a sister, Rashida, who's, I think, the #1 rated woman amateur boxer in her weight class, who will be fighting in the Olympic trials down in Louisiana next weekend. So, like I said, in this case, being the third best fighter in your family might not be so bad.
Well, the Ellis family certainly represented quite well. A right hand starting off. And also, Steve, Ellis dropping down from 68 here to the middleweight division, proverbially. He looks very good. He looks very lean. He looks powerful. And he hasn't lost much. He brought his power down with him along with the speed.
Yeah, he's being fairly active. He's being fairly aggressive, and he's throwing very straight punches. And when he's setting up on the outside without punching, he keeps his gloves pretty high. So, so far, I think it's a very impressive performance. I've given him the first couple of rounds.
If you're Emmanuel Aleem, how do you stem the tide in your favor? Because out of Aleem, we're seeing a lot of arm punches. He isn't sitting down on his punches compared to that of Ronald Ellis.
Well, you see a little change, a shift in the strategy in this round, in that Ellis is not coming forward right now, using a little lateral movement. Aleem needs to take advantage of that by putting on pressure and setting a very fast pace. He's a good puncher, Aleem. We saw what he did to Heatroff. We saw what he did in other fights. He can bang. He just needs the opportunity. Although Ellis, we should point out, never been down.
As we approach 100 seconds, Emmanuel Aleem had success against Matt Korobov, especially in the second half of the fight. It might be the mentality, Steve, of starting and getting cooking in the second half of the fight, but you can't wait too long, especially in a 10-round fight.
Exactly right. We've seen that strategy backfire so many times. You know, I'm going to come on in the second half of the fight. Well, sometimes there is no second half of the fight when you use that strategy. Let the other guy punch himself out. It is not a strategy that works very often.
It's better to be ahead and have to be able to preserve a lead instead of being down by 7-8 rounds, knowing that you need a knockout in order to get the fight in your favor. Good shot by Ellis.
What I like best about what Ellis is doing, right now they're pretty, I guess he feels he has Aleem hurt right here.
He's starting now to walk down Emmanuel Aleem, setting up his punches, a jab followed by a right cross.
But I mentioned it earlier, Ray. Ellis is applying pressure but keeping an arm's distance away from his opponent, which enables him to utilize and capitalize on that reach. Smart fight.
And Aleem going backwards. Typically, Aleem is the one who is the aggressive fighter. Tonight, he's dealing with that mental pressure and someone who's very confident in his ability in Ronald Ellis.
Yeah, I'm with you, Ray, because just looking at the pure stats, the pure numbers, the dimensions, you would think Aleem would have to come forward because he's got that huge reach disadvantage. But he's not coming forward.
Ronald Ellis looks fantastic. A 4-punch combination highlighted by a right hand smacking the head back of Emmanuel Aleem. Ronald Ellis looks terrific, Steve. His body language, he's mixing up his punches, quality work.
And I see his promoter and his brother in about the second round. They're going nuts because they know exactly. They agree 100% with you. He looks excellent, and I think he's won all 3 rounds.
Well, it's one of those things that you want to see someone fulfill their potential. And through the first few rounds that we are watching, Steve, it is almost like what people thought we were going to see out of Ellis on ShowBox.
Exactly right. And you're seeing him dominate this 3rd round right here. Aleem against the ropes, not a place he should be. And I think Ellis definitely thought he hurt him. Maybe he did hurt him because he went for it. He went for a big finish there in the 3rd round.
Also, Steve, it is punch selection. He is being crafty in the punches that he's throwing. He's throwing that straight right hand. He's using his jab. He's using different weapons to fluster Emmanuel Aleem.
And he's doing all of that, setting a fairly brisk pace. Now, can he keep that up?
Well, back comes Emmanuel Aleem. Emmanuel Aleem starting off like a house on fire, if I'm going to quote the late, great Gorilla Monsoon. My goodness.
A Gorilla Monsoon reference. I love that. That's my day, Ray.
Yeah, dating back to the events of professional wrestling down the street, Madison Square Garden. Right hand that starts it all for Ronald Ellis.
I got to throw this in. What I remember about Gorilla Monsoon, they introduced him as being from Manchuria.
Okay.
When he first came here. Spoke no English. 2 weeks later, he was doing interviews in perfect English. He's a quick learner, I guess.
Oh, my. Gorilla Monsoon, former professional wrestler. But right now, it is Ronald Ellis who is muscling Emmanuel Aleem. And the way that his eyes, you could tell the body language by Ronald Ellis. He's enjoying himself in there. He's savoring and enjoying the moment.
And what we're seeing is a Ronald Ellis. He takes a right hand there. But what we're seeing is a Ronald Ellis with two hands, and it makes a huge difference. That right hand has been injured so many times, 2 surgeries. He said it's fine now. I've heard that before. What fighter in a fighter meeting complains that he's injured? Never.
Yeah, none.
We know that. We both know that. but judging by performance, which is all you can go by and all that matters, look at his body language. You're right. He's so confident right now.
When he's using angles, Steve, and Emmanuel Aleem is coming forward, very tough. And he is a quality fighter. The fight that stands out for Emmanuel Aleem, we're going to have to go back a few years, is when he fought Damon Nicholson in Canada. And that was a draw, but it was an excellent fight between him and also, his opponent with Damon Nicholson. They fought to a draw, but Aleem thought he should have gotten the victory. But still, he's had a rough go when it comes to the draws. The draw recently against Matt Korobov back in May. But Aleem hasn't been able to crack that top 10 contention.
Yeah, well, one of the reasons he hasn't cracked it is he continually fights very top opposition. These are the records with 4 of his last 5 opponents. 17-1, 14-0, 25-1, and 28-2. That's the kind of competition Aleem's been facing.
Under a minute remaining here in the 4th as Aleem tried to jump up with the left hook. And Steve, as I look at 2019, we're closing out the year in grand style here on Showtime Championship Boxing. We'll be live top of the hour. Jamal Charlo goes head-to-head against Dennis Hogan. But this is the year of the comeback. And what I mean by that, guys who have a loss or two come back and win world championships. We saw it with Julian Williams when he had the loss at the hands of Jamal Charlo, comes back and defeats Jared Hurd to become 154-pound champion. Jamel Herring, 2 losses, comes back and wins a world title. Last year in December, Tony Harrison, couple losses, comes back and defeats Jermell Charlo. 2019 is the year of the comeback in boxing.
I agree 100%.
Andy Ruiz, how could I forget that? Recently lost tonight, but my goodness.
Biggest upset of the year for sure. Take a look at action here. And Aleem coming forward. But still, it was a strong round for Ronald Ellis. That left hook to the body blocked. But to get back to your point, Ray, I think it's such a positive because clearly in our day in boxing, I don't want to go back to the 40s and 50s, but in our day in boxing, a loss means way too much. And it's too much importance is put on it by promoters, by TV networks. That's beginning to change. And as a result of that, you see fighters, it's not whether you win or lose all the time, it's how you lose. And if you don't have a bad loss, you don't get knocked out, bring them back, give them another opportunity. When they get that second opportunity, they've been winning.
Look, how many times, and I'm going to go back a little bit, that we saw Emmanuel Augustus or guys like Mickey Ward or Arturo Gatti, the late great Arturo Gatti, if they would have been written off after 1 or 2 losses, we wouldn't have gotten the classics that we got. One of the best fights of all time that we saw here on Showtime Championship Boxing with Corrales and Castillo.
That's right.
I mean, those guys, it's okay to have a loss. Not everyone is going to be Floyd Mayweather.
Sometimes it's okay to have 10 losses. Orlando Salido.
Exactly.
And maybe Andrew Cancio is a recent example, only 4 or 5 losses, but a fighter who was not written off, or was written off and came back to win a world title.
Look, and I know some people would lead you to believe otherwise, but Vasily Lomachenko has a loss. I know there's a thought that he's undefeated, but, he did lose to Salido, so It's okay to have a loss.
It sure is, and, you go back in years, of course, fighters had a lot more losses, and it didn't affect how people viewed them.
And we'll see both of these men have a single loss, so this is a big fight for them in terms of getting back to the winning ways and trying to get to that next level.
Well, Aleem, to his credit, seems to understand that he has to change something up, and he's trying to change it up this round by becoming the aggressor, coming forward. He can't stay at the end of Ellis's punches. He has to get closer, and he's still getting hit a lot, flush, but he's having a little bit better round. He had a very strong first 30 seconds.
Well, Aleem's confidence, he came out in the 4th round, Steve, and was more aggressive. It was almost as if his trainer, George Peterson, said, look, you need to step on the gas. You need to go back to who you are and be the aggressor.
And Ellis has to prove that he can continue this pace that he's set, which is a very fast pace. Now, Ellis very busy, not a lot on those punches, but if you're going to throw a lot of punches, very often there isn't a lot on the punches.
Right hand, but back comes Aleem. They are mixing it up on the inside. as we near 65 seconds in the fifth.
Ellis's accuracy has been really, really sharp.
Well, he's been finding and locating those openings, Steve, upon Immanuwel Aleem.
Aleem a little bit this round looking like he wants to try to get even with one punch.
Good left hook by Immanuwel Aleem.
Yeah, that was a beauty because you saw Ellis kind of dip down after taking the punch in a delayed reaction.
Ronald Ellis, though, setting his feet. Immanuwel Aleem, Ronald Ellis, a significant fight for both, fighting in the middleweight division. The winner of this fight obviously wants a bigger name. Aleem has already fought Matt Korobov, who's in a co-feature against Chris Eubank Jr. They fought to a draw back in May of this past year. Ellis coming off of a loss on SHOWBOX to DeAndre Ware in February.
Most of those punches missed by Ellis. This has been Aleem's best round. Did he do enough to win it? That's arguable.
And we're halfway home, Steve. Once again, alongside the Hall of Famer, I'm Ray Flores, Steve Farhood. Happy holidays, everybody. We're through the halfway mark, Steve, between Ronald Ellis and Immanuwel Aleem. Ellis started off the first 3 to 4 rounds, looked very sharp, but now Immanuwel Aleem is getting the engine going.
10 rounds is a long time, Ray. They're only halfway through. They've both been as long as 10 rounds. We take a look at action here from round 5. We're at the halfway mark of a fight that's been fought at a very fast pace. Maybe that will benefit Aleem if Ellis slows down. If Ellis doesn't slow down, then it's just all about Ellis's legs. If he can keep a distance between the two, he's got a huge advantage.
Well, and also, if you are Ellis, he can be thinking, I'm ahead on the scorecards by a significant margin. He still has to be aggressive and do what got him to this point. Throw a lot of punches, find those openings, and hold your ground upon Immanuwel Aleem.
Yeah, hold his ground is the most important thing, and that means fighting at a comfortable distance because he's got a 79-inch reach. That's the reach of a heavyweight. And Ronald Ellis is fighting this fight at 163 pounds. He has an exceptional reach. If he doesn't use it, he's only cheating himself.
And Ellis throwing straight punches, going to the body, followed by a right hand down the center. Immanuwel Aleem came out, tried to take control. It is now a battle, Steve, in my opinion. Who is going to command the center of that ring? Because both men love to be, or in our showcasing, big left hook that connects by Ellis to try to be the aggressor. So who's going to be able to impose their will upon the other man?
Well, right now, Aleem's successful in making it an in-fight. And I think that's going to benefit him in the long run.
Well, Aleem has got to smother the punches of Ronald Ellis so Ellis doesn't get the proper leverage behind his shots.
Exactly right. And they really haven't fought an extended part of this fight on the inside, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Whenever Ellis can extend those arms, he has success punching.
But it's that leverage that makes a significant impact where the pop and the force is at the end of the punch. A left hook that connects by Ronald Ellis on the inside, but back comes Immanuwel Aleem going to work. The art of fighting on the inside is something to really behold, Steve, because both men are trying to do that, but Ellis is trying to create some distance so that he can gain that proper shot upon Immanuwel Aleem.
And it's taken Aleem, Ray, too long to realize that he has to shorten that distance and come forward. He started this fight backing up. That wasn't going to do it.
When George Peterson, the trainer of Immanuwel Aleem, certainly is not familiar or not used to seeing his fighters fight off their back foot because Paul Williams had one speed and that's come forward.
He was a tall fighter who fought aggressively and on the inside. But you weren't going to change the way Paul Williams fought. He was so successful doing what he did.
No, and Immanuwel Aleem is coming out being more aggressive, and I think it's serving him well.
But I'll tell you, even though you would think Aleem would have a big edge on the inside, Ellis is holding his own on the inside. He's very competitive when they're in fighting.
Well, now Ellis smiling upon Immanuwel Aleem as we near 30 seconds left.
I would call that a demonic smile.
Yes, very much so. He's enjoying the leather flying. But back comes Immanuwel Aleem. It's a good test for both men who are in similar stages of their careers, Steve. You know, they have similar records. Ellis is 4 years older than Aleem, but this is a crossroads fight for these two individuals.
You are 100% right, and a really important fight for Aleem because he's had some big names he's been in with. Heatroff was a big name coming up. We mentioned Korobov. He can't afford a loss here. Ronald Ellis is new to the middleweight division, and he's going to be creating a name for himself in one fight if he can win this fight. And I have him clearly ahead.
Well, and here's some of the work, that inside work. There's a nice right hand by Ellis.
That's what I mean. He's holding his own on the inside. He's doing well. I wouldn't recommend extended periods of infighting for him when he has that huge reach advantage, but so far with Courage Chabalala, the former heavyweight, in his corner, he's doing very well.
Steve, the only thing you can ask for in life is an opportunity. Immanuwel Aleem has that, but you have to be able to make good upon that opportunity. You got to be able to win that marquee fight. That has been eluding Immanuwel Aleem. Can he get that off his back tonight?
Well, he's going to have to rally in the second half of the fight. And, you know, to further your point, Ray, it's even more important these days to take advantage of opportunities because fighters are fighting less. They're only fighting a couple times a year, 10-round fighters, and these are 10-round fighters.
Look, there are not many people like Deontay Wilder who fight 3 times in less than a month, and you're a world champion. Looking forward, also, speaking of champions, Gervonta Davis has his 3rd fight coming up at the end of the month. A late Christmas present for everyone on December 28th when he will step inside the ring against Yuriokis Gamboa. Don't forget to check that out on Showtime Championship Boxing, December 28th out in the ATL.
Yeah, has Gervonta Davis become a must-see fighter or what?
I would say absolutely.
And a very interesting fight on the undercard, a title fight at 175 between Jean Pascal
and Badou Jack.
And Badou Jack. And when is Badou Jack not entertaining?
Always in an entertaining matchups. Glad to see that Badou Jack is okay after that laceration that he had in the middle of his forehead back in January to start the year on Showtime pay-per-view.
That was about as much blood as I think I've seen in a fight in the last 10 years.
And the fight we're talking about with Badou Jack and Marcus Brown, I believe 100-plus stitches on the forehead of Badou Jack, but he's okay, and we'll fight Jean Pascal, co-main event. Later tonight, we'll have Jamal Charlo going head-to-head against Dennis Hogan for the middleweight championship, and these two middleweights are slugging it out here. Nice right hand by Immanuwel Aleem, but back comes Ellis with the work rate.
Ellis landed a big right hand and smiled. You still see how animated he remains. And he has the look, Ray, of a fighter who's so confident he's going to win and perform well that even if he gets hit flush with a shot, nothing's going to happen. That's what he's projecting.
Steve, he's also extremely athletic. The athleticism is clearly in the favor of Ronald Ellis, who seems to be more agile, quick on his feet. He is light on his feet as well, whereas Aleem, athletic, yes, but more slow and plodding. Methodical is what Aleem is.
And Aleem occasionally going for the fences, and that's not going to get it done because, of course, those punches are easily seen. Well, you mentioned earlier, Ray, that Ronald Ellis has fought on Showtime, specifically on the ShowBox series 4 times. I called all 4 of those fights, and let me tell you, this is by far the best I've ever seen him look.
Well, this is what his handlers always thought he could do, is put on performances like this. And Steve, being in this new social media generation, I don't think there is a better platform for a young fighter than right here on social media, on YouTube, on Facebook. You know, it's a great platform.
And this is a very, very good fight to have on this platform as well, a very high-quality fight.
Significant financial opportunities lie in the balance. Final moments of round 7. And that's the end of the 7th round. Steve, thus far, what are you seeing from Ronald Ellis? I think he's making a case, if things continue to play out the way that they are, that he might be able to fight the winner of Eubank or Korobov, or maybe down the line put himself in line for a match against Charlo or Hogan.
He's not that. If he wins this fight, if either one wins this fight, they're very close to where they want to get to, because there are 4 champions at 160 pounds. We know who they are. And Charlo needs opponents. Maybe he'll get Eubank next, maybe not. Maybe there'll be a rematch with Korobov. Who knows? But there's doubt. And Ellis would be a fresh face in the middleweight division. And if it's Aleem who rallies and comes back and wins the second half of this fight, it would be a guy who's paid his dues and deserves a shot. So either way, I think the winner of this fight will be in a very good position to move forward and maybe secure that title fight.
And Steve, many times you see and we hear about the young, hot prospects that are in their early 20s, guys that are making names early in their careers. It's taken a while for these fighters to truly get their recognition. Aleem's been a pro for 7 years. Ellis has been a pro for 8 years. But the physical maturity, I think, is going to play a factor in terms of why Ellis or Aleem can have success here in their late 20s, early 30s.
That's one of the reasons this drives me crazy, Ray, that fighters fight so little today. You don't get better at doing anything by doing it very rarely. You get better at doing it by doing it a lot. And, of course, in the old days, nice right hand by Aleem. In the old days, fighters fought way more often than they do now. But also, in contrast to so many of the American fighters, you look at all the fighters from the former Soviet Union, so many of them are world-class fighters after fewer than 10 fights, Lomachenko being the most dramatic example. But there are many others. And the American fighters are not advancing as quickly because they don't have the amateur background.
There's a right hand that connects by Ellis. And Steve, to get to your point, as a minute has elapsed in the 8th round, they have extensive amateur careers. You hear from the Cuban national team and the Ukraine national team, over 200 or 300 fights. That is a common denominator when it comes to a high-level amateur in those countries. With U.S. fighters, that is becoming few and far between. If you have over 100 fights as an amateur, that's considered a ton here in the United States.
Yeah, very different back in the 80s and 90s when the U.S. did so much better in the Olympics. You think back to the 84 Olympic team with Breland and Whitaker and Biggs and Holyfield. And, they had a lot of amateur experience internationally. That's something a lot of young American fighters today don't get. And it comes down to a matter of money. It costs money to take a team and travel to Ireland or the Ukraine or wherever you want to go. And that money isn't always around.
Well, speaking of money, the winner of this fight will put themselves in line for a bigger fight with significant financial ramifications. Quite a bit on the line, a right hand that backed up Immanuwel Aleem.
Ellis has slowed down somewhat, but he's still landing some flush shots. And he's doing it from a distance, the distance he needs.
Well, he's throwing the jab confidently, Steve, and he's using the right hand. And I think for him, he's probably saying, thank goodness my right hand is holding up.
Yeah, you could tell there's nothing wrong with it tonight, at least judging by how he's punching. A lot of times a fighter will have an injured paw and fakes it well by using it, dealing with the pain. You don't want your opponent to know you're a one-handed fighter, ever.
If you're Immanuwel Aleem, though, he's got to turn up the intensity, Steve, because Ellis has been gaining and has the majority of the advantages when it comes to the exchanges.
Yeah, Aleem has gone 10 rounds only once in his career. That was his most recent fight.
Aleem came forward, 2 right hands to end the 8th. 2 more rounds remaining between Immanuwel Aleem and Ronald Ellis. And there is Immanuwel Aleem, trained by George Peterson, former trainer Paul Williams. And let's revisit some of the work from the 8th.
Yeah, I think it was a good round for Aleem. He landed and he finished strongly, but he did get hit with some flush shots that could give the judges pause as to who to score the round for. There you see one of them right there.
Ronald Ellis dropping from the super middleweight division and now the middleweight division. New trainer and all, but it looks like that change of scenery is paying dividends for him.
And let's remember, he's coming off a 10-month layoff and a loss.
His last victory came against Eduardo Mercedes back in the Dominican Republic back in December of last year, just under a year to the date. So Ronald Ellis looking to get back in the win column, but starting off strong once again is Immanuwel Aleem.
And one thing we're not going to know tonight, if this fight had been fought at the original contract of 160, would that have weakened Ellis to any degree, being that he was coming down from 68, where he had fought for a long time? We don't know the answer to that. So it might have been a break for him that Aleem was 5 pounds heavier and couldn't make the original weight. They redid the contract and they fought at 165 pounds.
And we've heard it, Steve, when you're coming down, especially, it's one thing to go from 126 to 130. That's significant, don't get me wrong. But 8 pounds is a new world, and to be able to meet him halfway, I think is serving Ellis well to adapt to the weight.
Yeah, I think you're right, and let's keep in mind that Ronald Ellis is 30 years old. He's not young. When you're younger, usually the weight comes off a little easier. When you're older, it gets much harder. Any fighter will tell you that.
No question. Well, hey, Steve, 30s, as they like to say, are the new 20s. So I'm not just saying that because I'm in my 30s, but...
we won't go into which decade I'm in.
Exactly. Well, we hope all of you are enjoying yourselves. Countdown live here from Barclays Center in Brooklyn. Coming up top of the hour, Showtime Championship Boxing coming your way. Jamal Charlo puts his title on the line against Dennis Hogan. Also, Chris Eubank Jr. makes his United States debut against Matt Korobov. Also, Marlon Tapala's out of the Philippines in action against Ryusuke Iwasawa. That is a matchup in the junior featherweight division. Good action here with Ronald Ellis. But back comes Aleem.
Aleem came back with a multi-punch combination. The difference is Aleem's punches missed. Ellis's punches all landed. There's no doubt the pace is not what it was in the first half. That does not surprise me because Ellis set such a fast pace. But he's doing what he has to remain competitive with the slower pace.
Under a minute remaining in the ninth. They started off like featherweights, Steve, and now they're settling into what is, for the most part, a middleweight pace.
Yeah, and I think if Aleem wins this round and the next one, it could be close on the cards. I have him needing at least a knockdown, if not a knockout, to win. But he's won a couple of the rounds in the second half of the fight where I gave Ellis the first 4 rounds in the first half of the fight.
And Steve, for Immanuwel Aleem, thank you. As we take a look at him, if he were to lose this fight, it wouldn't be the end, but it's almost like he would go to the mentality of potentially being a gatekeeper instead of being a contender. So that is what is on the line for both men.
Yeah, you're right, Ray. And if you get dropped down into that category of gatekeeper, how many wins do you need to get back to where one win would have done it for you in this fight?
Well, it becomes even that much harder as the ninth round has drawn to a close.
Take a look at action
As
from round 8.
Taking a look at it.
And Ellis landed, and see Aleem shaking his head. No, you know what that means. That means yes. That means those punches landed. And Aleem tried to come back with a multi-punch flurry, but didn't do much damage. And there you see it. A good 4 or 5 of those shots landed out of the 7 or 8 he threw. The last couple were short. But Ellis's accuracy has been as impressive as any other part of his game tonight.
Well, completely agree. And you know what? Not to say, and we are here in, the New York area here at Brooklyn Barclays Center, and I know a different basketball team, but sometimes as the Knicks went ahead and fired David Fisdale and inserted a new coach, sometimes a new coach, a new voice can pay dividends. And for Ronald Ellis, I think it is proving to be exactly that.
I think you're right. He seems refreshed. Again, this is the most high-energy performance I've ever seen out of him. And Courage Shabalala is doing very well with him, clearly, because he's in shape. And maybe more important than anything, and we can't credit Courage Shabalala for this, but maybe more important than anything else, his right hand seems fine.
For Immanuwel Aleem, you have to be thinking in the 26-year-old's mind, I have got to push the pace, and I have to have a big round in the eyes of the judges. Good body work by Immanuwel Aleem trying to go to the body. Some infighting as Danny Chavone will step in and separate them. You know what? I got to give credit to Danny Chavone. You know a good referee is there when you don't have to mention his name much.
How many times has he broken these fighters? I don't remember.
First or second time?
1 or 2 times the whole fight.
At the max as a minute has come off the clock. Back comes Immanuwel Aleem pressuring Ronald Ellis.
A couple of good right hands by Aleem. And you talk about the fact that they haven't been clinching and there's been very little holding. That's to Ellis's credit because he's the one with the big reach. And on the inside, you think he would be happy to hold. He is not.
Oh, Ellis he has the mentality of a throwback fighter, Steve, in the sense that he likes to engage, he likes to mix it up, and I think if you put whoever in front of him, he'd be willing to take it.
It's been a nice mix from Ellis of boxing from the outside, coming forward in spots, but most of the time keeping a comfortable distance.
Well, and also Ronald Ellis, who is a devout New England Patriots fan, as talking to you guys a couple of days before. He actually fought on ShowBox right before the Super Bowl, and he was telling us how much he was a big Patriots fan, but he comes from the New England area, very tough, and wants to really put on a show for his home area. Final minute of what has been an entertaining scrap between Ronald Ellis and Immanuwel Aleem. Ray Flores, the Hall of Famer Steve Farhood. Ronald Ellis trying to get back in the win column after sustaining his first defeat back in February. Immanuwel Aleem had a draw against Matt Korobov back in May, wants to get a W to close out the year. How will the judges have this fight scored? To us, though, Ellis has had the most impressive performance of his career. Immanuwel Aleem came forward, gave his best, but it will go to the judges. Terrific fight and a memorable performance for that man, Ronald Ellis.
Well, you know, in the first fight, the women's fight, Ray, the scores were a lot closer than we thought. I think we both think Ellis won this fight comfortably. Let's see what the judges say, but I can't picture him not emerging victorious on the card.
And here we see, we will go back and take a look at some of the action, Steve.
Yeah, the flush punches in this fight were landed by Ellis, and they were a variety of punches. Sometimes on the inside, he worked to the body. His jab was good. He's got that long reach. He used it. Straight right hand. You see him setting up the straight right hand. You know it's coming.
Well, we saw different phases to the game from Ronald Ellis. He fought at distance. He fought on the inside. He dealt with the aggression from Aleem. And there you saw he was smiling and winking at the camera. That's how much fun he was having. He was enjoying himself inside the ring.
And I think the reason he was enjoying himself was because he was fully equipped to deal with this fight. We talked 3-4 times about it. When you have a chronic injury like he's had with the right hand, surgery a couple of times, it clearly diminished him as a fighter in some of those ShowBox fights. That wasn't the case tonight. We saw the real Ronald Ellis.
Well, and also, Steve, fighting at this level is something, you know, you hear about it all the time, fighting under the lights at this stage. For Ronald Ellis, the fact that he is a veteran, that he's fought on ShowBox before, I think it served him so well.
It served him well, and the fact that he's been 10 rounds before, where Aleem had been 10 rounds only once before, definitely served him well as well. Just a good all-around performance and an eye-opening performance. When you're a have-not who's not among the very top in a division, you have to do something to make people remember you. I think he did enough to do that tonight.
Ronald Ellis with a complete performance tonight. Will he get the verdict and the decision in his favor? As yet, we are awaiting the decision from our ring announcer, Miguel Flores. But for Immanuwel Aleem, if he were to sustain the defeat, where do you think he goes? Does he go into that category of potentially being a gatekeeper?
I think you're exactly right. That's exactly where he goes. You know, he still has some value. He has some name value. He looks good on a record, but he's going to be a tough fight for anybody. He was a tough fight tonight for Ellis, even though we think Ellis clearly won. So yeah, but it's a big setback for him because, again, when you're a have-not, and what I mean by a have-not is someone who's not at the top, someone who's not favored by the promoters, it takes that much more to get back up to the top.
And now let's send it up with the official decision. Here is Miguel Flores.
Ladies and gentlemen, after 10 rounds of action, we go to the judges' scorecards. Judge John Stewart saw the contest 95-95, a draw. However, he was overruled by Judge Ron McNair and Judge Martha Tremblay. Judge Ron McNair saw it 97-93, and Judge Martha Tremblay saw it 98-92. Overruling by your winner by majority decision, Ronald Ellis.
So Ronald Ellis gets the victory by majority decision, but Steve, I had to say that when I heard a draw, I go, are you kidding me? What were they watching?
And John Stewart came up with a 95-95 score. A veteran judge who has been one of the top Atlantic City judges for many, many years. I'm shocked at that. The other judges, 97, 93, 98, 92, they saw it more the way we saw it. Ultimately, though, Ronald Ellis is always in close fights, at least on the cards. They got it right.
Thankfully, the right man won. Ray Flores alongside the Hall of Famer Steve Farhood. Steve, as we prepare for Showtime Championship Boxing coming up at the top of the hour, live on Showtime. If you want to start your free trial, go to Showtime.com to begin that. But, Steve, let's take a look at our co-main event. Chris Eubank Jr. going head-to-head against Matt Korobov. What are you expecting to see?
Well, first of all, it's odds-wise, it's a very close fight. I'm not going to be surprised if either guy wins. Eubank is a little bit of a mystery. He's a veteran. He's fought tremendous competition, as has Korobov. They're both top-level middleweights, and the stakes are so high. But Eubank, I don't want to see him fight and press to try to make too big an impression in his American debut. That would be a mistake. He has to try to do enough to win. He's a little bit of an unorthodox fighter, not always technically so sound, but can be explosive. And I'm sure his plan is to dominate the second half of the fight. That's when you want to look to see what Eubank can really do.
In Charlo and Hogan, Hogan has proclaimed that there will be a lot of Irish fans in attendance here at Barclays Center. Will that propel him to the victory and surprising and upsetting Jermall Charlo?
Well, the bagpipes will be coming out with Hogan. We know that. But Charlo is sort of in a second home here in New York City. So Charlo's a naturally bigger guy. He plans to use his jab to dominate. And it's going to be up to Hogan to really fight almost a perfect fight to pull off the upset.
Well, in my opinion, I know you can't give predictions, Steve, but I will. Give me Eubank Jr. by a 9th-round knockout. Jermall Charlo to go out and do what he does. A late stoppage for Jermall Charlo. We'll now send it up once again to our other members of our broadcast team. We'll send it to Brian and Luke. Gentlemen.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Ray. Great job, gentlemen. As always, Brian Campbell, Luke Thomas, thank you guys for joining us up here at the analyst desk. Okay, Brian, let's get right into it. That was our first middleweight bout of the evening, but as Ray indicated at 9 p.m. Eastern, this whole thing goes live on Showtime. Your main event, Jermall Charlo putting his WBC middleweight title up for grabs against Dennis Hogan. We had talked about some ways for Dennis Hogan to win. Let's flip the script a little bit. Let's give Jermall Charlo, who's, been a little angry this week, been a little upset, needs a little some athletes.
It's the passion. It's the passion.
Dude, some athletes need a pat on the back. He might be one of them. What are some of his best weapons?
Oh, certainly it's that jab that he talked about, that we'll see it in a different light tonight as a weapon. But his trainer, Ronnie Shields, told us this week, to counteract such a difficult style that Dennis Hogan does bring to the table, it's going to be smart punches and bunches. Certainly Charlo's going to have to dictate that space, pace, all of that stuff, but it's going to begin and end with the jab. And while Charlo is certainly knowledgeable and understanding of how tricky and difficult Hogan is, one thing he did say was, how is he going to do that the whole night? How is he going to win a fight running and moving backwards? It's a difficult tightrope walk that he's going to have to pull off. He's going to have to get very close to that fire without getting burnt. Charlo said, you know what this fight's going to look a lot like? You remember Floyd Mayweather, Ricky Hatton, 2007? Maybe it was close, difficult, struggle in the beginning, but that fight ended with a bang. He thinks that's the direction he's headed.
I mean, look, let's tie two topics together here in talking about how good Jermall Charlo is. Here's the reality. He's better at some things than others, Brian Campbell, but he's good at everything. He is an excellent athlete. He is a born fighter, of course, but he's a very good technician as well. I think his uppercut, if you ask me, especially the one he hit on J-Rock, is just, it took Paulie Malignaggi's breath away. And here's the point. Tonight can go, I think, one of two ways. One way is the way you mentioned, which is maybe Hogan wins, maybe he doesn't, but he kind of frustrates Charlo, and he ekes out a decision like he did against Korobov, and people say, can he punch at this weight class? Is this the right space for him? How good he is? There's another way this could go. If he beats Hogan in a dynamic way, you don't get the bump from the name. But if you really showcase what he did in his first two fights against Centeno, really dynamic power and this wide array of boxing skills, maybe Hogan tries to frustrate you, but in the end, you can show maybe you are the best middleweight in the world. I had said earlier in the program, Brian, look, we don't really know where Canelo is at. He might stay at 175. Who could go to 168? I think Triple G is still very much a viable talent, but I don't think he's at his best anymore. There is Andrade still out there, but Danny Jacobs is kind of bolted out of the division.
We saw Sergey Derevchenko sitting in the crowd tonight getting a good look at what's going to be going on.
He absolutely is on that list as well. But my point being is tonight's one of those nights where it doesn't mean if you beat Hogan, you're the best middleweight in the world. But it's another step in this campaign of respect he's trying to get. It's not the kind that builds your popularity, but you want to be true number one. This is a essential building block to that place.
And it would be in line with that run that he had been on, coming off of the Island knockout, coming off, of course, of that Centeno knockout. And he looks back at that Korobov fight as a little bit of a turning point. Look, Korobov was a late-minute replacement after Willie Monroe failed the drug test. And also, Jermall watched his younger brother, Jermell, lose such a tough decision, lose his title for the first time to Tony Harrison right before that. He's not using that as an excuse, but he's basically saying, that wasn't me, that wasn't the best of me. It's about getting back in line tonight. I like that it's a difficult challenge, that Hogan is not going to be easy, that you can't really prepare for people who fight that kind of style with so much rhythm and pressure and movement. But if you get him out of there and you do it spectacularly, like you mentioned, middleweight division, and there's an opening here for Jermall Charlo to really make that run and prove himself the best of the game.
And by the way, I'm not buying this whole idea that he's not a legitimate puncher at middleweight. The first two fights in this weight class looked amazing. Okay, against Korobov, it didn't. But as you noted, this is true in MMA and boxing. When A-side fighters have a B-side opponent that falls out and they gets another B-side replacement last minute, let's say somewhere in the week to 2 week department, you routinely see them take it easy. You routinely see them sort of feel things out, not take risks, because they didn't look at tape, and their coaches might not have a good game plan. They always, not always, but often, I should say, play it safe. I don't hold that against them. And if it's true that he hurt his hand against Brandon Adams, okay, he was a 154 guy stepping up as well. It wasn't the best look.
Adams fought a negative style, too, though, just to be
super negative style. And he had his moments in the fight. He's a good fighter. But in the end, first of all, Charlo got his hand raised both times. Second of all, to me, it's like it's not enough of a sample size to just declare Charlo is, well, he was a good 154 puncher, not at 160. I think tonight can be one of those nights where, not the stars align exactly, but if he's feeling great, if he's healthy, if he doesn't have any injuries, I think there's going to be several times where Hogan gets laced with the thunder, and we're going to have to see how he responds.
I mean, Hogan only 7 knockouts in 32 pro fights, but he said, look, not having to cut that weight to 54, he feels his strength again. He thinks he's going to be a factor in there. You don't want 3 somewhat average negative performances. This is Jermall Charlo's opportunity to really ring that bell.
And then the last part about this, we've been alluding to it all broadcast. Jermall Charlo, part of his media tour this week, part of your conversation with him, part of the fighter meetings, everywhere he's gone, it was really manifest with the Stephen A. Smith show on ESPN, was this desire for respect. Why is nobody talking about me? Why does nobody care? Well, okay, you're on Showtime. You're in the main event. We're in Brooklyn. This is the home of Sean Price, Biggie, and many other luminaries. Mike Tyson. So many. You get a nice knockout. Again, not the biggest name in the world, but you show your boxing skill, your athletic ability. You get on Sports Center. Well, hold on. You might start getting that respect level that I think has been eluding him. He's asking why, Brian, hasn't happened. Well, the last 2 fights have not been the best demonstration of what Charlo is capable of. This is a chance to write a new chapter.
Yeah, and you certainly need the dance partners. You certainly need the big names to be opposite you, and that's what leads us into this co-main event, Luke, when you want to talk about potential long-term opponents for Jermall Charlo. You're looking at it there when Matt Korobov takes on Chris Eubank Jr.
And, of course, we'll get to that in just a minute here, a 5-inch reach advantage for Charlo, a 4-inch height advantage. It is something of it's a difficult hill to climb, I think, for Dennis Hogan. Now, you mentioned something. I saw the weigh-in broadcast. I want to read it here because I don't want to get the words wrong. Brian Campbell, what is the broken rhythm pressure method style? Is that a strategy for conception among couples? What is that?
Wow. Hey, how about that one? No, it's an active volume punching style, but it's really built off of the footwork. But I want to sort of make a line in the sand here. Jeff Horn uses that same trainer in Glenn Rushton and has been more offensive with his broken rhythm pressure style. Remember his fights against Manny Pacquiao, against Terrence Crawford, coming at you constantly. If you go back and revisit that really solid performance by Dennis Hogan against Jaime Munguia leading into this fight, he's a little bit more of a boxer with that style. A little bit more about darting in, getting your punches off, and getting out without taking that receipt in return.
Also, and if you look at what Adams did in watching the tape on that, speaking of the broken rhythm, splitting the timing of Charlo was one thing he was actually pretty good at. Charlo would wait, and as he would begin to step before he could fully commit to it, Adams would pop him. You could see something like that. Also, by the way, I went back and looked at the CompuBox stats for the Munguia fight, and what I noticed was Hogan said the strategy was to have more volume. In the end, their punch differential was only 1, but if you look at where Hogan shined, it was in the second half. Now, that was a newer fighter, much more junior in his career, in Munguia, 22 years of age at the time.
Problem cutting to weight at 154.
No doubt about it. Charlo's not that guy. But I am going to be interested to see, yes, of course, he's probably going to take his time early, but how much can he pour it on late? To what extent is that second half of the fight something that's more accessible to Hogan over time? Do you think that's a legitimate... Does he have to win late if he's going to win it all?
Charlo?
No, Hogan.
Hogan's got to win rounds if he's going to win it all.
But what I'm saying is, he's not the kind of guy who's going to come out barnstorming.
No,
so it seems like the second half is more critical for that particular style.
Certainly, and it's going to be about disarming, and it's going to be about frustrating. It's going to be about lowering Jermall Charlo's output if Hogan is going to be able to have that success. But like we talked about, you don't have a guy who has trouble making weight in Jermall Charlo, and you have a guy who can get you out of there if you linger too long when trying to dart in and out with that said broken rhythm pressure method.
All right, that takes us now to the co-main event. Again, another middleweight affair. This time, Chris Eubank Jr. making his U.S. debut, taking on Matt Korobov. We've been talking about this fight the entire time. Let's center the conversation where most of the energy has been on Fight Week, which is if Eubank Jr. wins, not Korobov, which we'll talk about in a second, but let's say Eubank Jr. wins, well, he's going to get Charlo next. Why have there been such grand expectations for this particular fighter in this way?
You know, it's because what Chris Eubank Jr. brings to the table. Look, he's a star, all right? You just got to see it. He's got the power. He's got the swagger. He's got the lineage and the family name, the son of former two-division champion Chris Eubank Sr. And we love when Sr. gets on the microphone.
He's a poet.
And he did this week and basically said, look, my son has the spirit and the energy of a world champion, but it comes down to directing that energy. And in some ways, that's been Chris Eubank's problem. Yes, he's been at 168 pounds over the last 3 years and been in some big fights, but I think at times he's got an identity problem in the ring in terms of what type of fighter he is. Got the athleticism, got the power, but does he have the ability to be a complete fighter and a boxer and carry out a game plan on this level and set it up? Let's not forget just a couple years ago, that tough loss to George Groves. People were questioning him, hey, do you have the right trainers in your corner? Do you have the right game plan? Prince Nassim Ahmed came out and said, hey, I think you should finish. I asked Eubank about that this week. Did not want to talk about it, rightfully so, but he has bounced back very nicely. I love what he did against DeGale in his last fight. Really mixed up the boxing with the punching, which is what he's going to have to do tonight. Eubank has that it factor. You saw him walk into the arena tonight with the big fur coat. He knows how to draw a crowd. He's got a big fan base in Britain. You look at the middleweight division as a whole, and you look at the options that Jermall Charlo could have if he gets by Hogan. I'm certainly, as a fan, would love to see a power puncher, a guy who can talk like Eubank, step in there. One thing, though, Charlo has said all week is, can we stop bringing this guy's name up until he shows me something that he's worthy of being on my level?
And this is why Korobov is absolutely the right opponent, because the question about DeGale when he fought Eubank was, okay, even George Grove after the fight said, yeah, I think DeGale should retire at this point. Yes, sure, good win for Eubank, power punching, athletic, but that was DeGale at his least. Now, I'm not sure that's the fairest assessment, but that was at least one from a guy who had been a mutual opponent. So against Korobov here tonight, you again have a guy, Paulie Malignaggi has been adamant about this. Guys, don't forget, an amateur world champion.
350 fights.
Now, here's the thing, though. He hasn't won a bout in 18 months. He's 0-1-1 in his last two bouts. Some of that is controversial, but I love this fight, Brian, because if Eubank can get past this real clever boxer, that means, I don't know if he's going to beat Charlo, but it really ups my enthusiasm for it. Not because he's a big mouth, but because he knows how to work through and defeat a very established technician.
It would be the biggest win of his career. It would be the most impressive win of Chris Eubank Jr.'s career. And look, if there's anybody due, Luke, it's Matt Korobov. Twice in his career, he's had to take layoffs upwards of 2 years due to promotional issues, just sort of getting himself into the big fights that he wants. When he's gotten into those big fights, there's been some of those tough decisions. Some people thought he beat Jermall Charlo a year ago. Some people thought he should have got the edge against Immanuwel Aleem a few months back in their draw. Korobov's trainer told us he's going to have to hit, hold, and move. He's going to have to, in some ways, make it a little bit of a negative fight because they know Eubank's power. But one thing Eubank pointed out to me in the fighter meetings on Friday that's going to be key, he noticed that Korobov's 36 years old. His last couple fights, there has been a little bit of a fade late over that second half. One thing Eubank does, even if he's down on the cards, he never gets down because he's got that big right hand. It's going to be interesting if this goes into those championship rounds, what we're going to end up seeing.
Third southpaw in a row for him as well. All right, our first fight, the feature fight of the night when the broadcast starts at 9 p.m. on Showtime, an interim IBF championship bantamweight bout between Marlon Tapales and Rizke Iwasa very quickly. What can folks expect?
Oh,
Super
they
quick.
can expect volume, action. This is going to be fantastic. Tapales promoted by Manny Pacquiao, and he's got that southpaw aggressive style. Gotten up off the canvas in the past to win fights. A former champion. One thing he did tell me, watch out for the right uppercut tonight. This is Tapales. He says every sparring partner was a southpaw that he worked with, and he broke every single one of their noses with what he calls the 12 o'clock punch. Iwasa, much bigger opponent looking to box, so I want to see how this matchup plays out.
The night continues on Showtime right at 9 p.m. East Coast time. Join us for Morning Combat at noon on YouTube. That's Brian Campbell. I'm Luke Thomas signing off. Enjoy your evening of Showtime Championship Boxing.
All right, say everything you just said, but do it.
Let's go. Let's get it. Let's go. Take. Man, it's a good feeling. It's a good feeling to be from Houston, see the support. Houston is a growing city. It's getting better and better and better. Every step of the way, it's starting to become one of the best cities in America. It's some talent in Houston. No matter what you do, with sports, entertainment, it's fire down here. Houghton, what the Astros doing. You got Megan Thee Stallion, you got Travis Scott, you got the Charlo twins, champions. That's all you hear is winning, champions. Someone that's like, next level. And this is one of those things, man, it feels good to be from Houston. We headed to the Rockets game. We're gonna see James Harden take care of business, do what he have to do. This is something I do often. I always come to the games, and get a chance to relax outside of training. Rockets game tonight. Y'all know it go down. Hey, you're not from Houston. Dude, there you go. There you go. It's James Harden. I made my 30-day weigh-in today. Hard training. We get ready to spar tomorrow. And now we at the Rockets game. They don't get no better than this, bro. They don't get no better than this.
Charlo says he wants to be the king of the jungle.
There's no way you can tame a lion. And that's me.
And that's me.
The power is for real.
And the entire sport of boxing is hearing Charlo's roar. What? He is the king of this jungle.
Lions only, baby.
Jamal Charlo versus Dennis Hogan for the middleweight championship on Showtime.
3, 2, 1.
Party at the Gallagher house.
Haven't touched you yet, Frank.
You're a disgrace, Gallagher.
Thank you, sir.
Man, this is what I thought living in LA was gonna be like.
Ray Donovan. This was 25 years ago, I'd have put a gun to your head.